Hello, welcome to another episode of In the Trenches with Gang Green. I'm your host, Bubbs. Today is Friday, August 23rd. Hopefully everybody's having a good day so far today. It is the day before the New York Jets preseason finale against the New York Giants at MetLife Stadium. And we will be previewing all of the action today on the podcast, episode 366 of the In the Trenches with Gang Green podcast. I thank you, as always, for joining me. For those tuning in on YouTube, make sure to please like and subscribe. We have hit 400 subscribers, so I appreciate all of your support. As always, thank you to all who tune in both on the audio podcast platforms and, of course, here on YouTube. Now, before we begin today's podcast, let me tell you about our podcast partners, starting with our friends over at BetUS, America's favorite online sportsbook. If you want to bet on this game, use my link, which can be found in the description of this video and in the pinned comment on YouTube. When you use my link, you will get a 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits up to $2,000. And the odds for this game so far as of now for the New York Jets, they are plus 120 on the money line, and they are 2.5-point underdogs. And the total over-under spread for this one is at 32. So if you want to bet on any of tomorrow night's action, use my link for a 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits up to $2,000. Also, of course, our friends over at SeatGeek. SeatGeek, of course, tickets for the NFL season are hot right now. If you want any of the tickets for maybe this weekend's game or any event, not just sports, head on over to SeatGeek. As you all know, they rate each ticket on a scale from 1 to 10. Green dots, look for the green dots. Those are the good deals, so you know if you're making the right purchase or not on the tickets you are looking at. Plus, my viewers, use promo code BUBSONSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Link down below to download the SeatGeek app. And also, as always, our friends over at Huga House. You see me wear my Huga House hat all the time on the podcast. If you want the hat I wear often on this show or any of the hats Aaron Rodgers wears, use my promo code BUBS for 15% off at checkout and get yourself some of the same swag that QB1 Aaron Rodgers wears. Huga House link also can be found in the description of this episode. All right, now into today's podcast. New York Jets, New York Giants. We've already went over, of course, the odds. Tomorrow afternoon, or tomorrow night, I should say, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, Jets, Giants to close out the preseason. As Saleh said yesterday, no starters for the New York Jets. Rodgers won't play, so this won't be like we saw last year where Rodgers and the starters got about 2 drives and a tune-up for week 1. We won't see that tomorrow. Rodgers and the starters will be on the sideline, and expect probably even maybe some other high-end backups potentially not to play. Probably somewhere in the ballpark of 28 to 32 players might be, if I had to assume, maybe inactive tomorrow. I think 28 were inactive in week 1 of the preseason. 32 were inactive this week. So somewhere around that number will be inactive tomorrow. You'll see a lot more depth, more rookies out there as they continue to get some important preseason reps. The Jets look to finish out a perfect preseason. The Giants look to finish the preseason above 500. As I always say, before we break down what to watch in this game, the biggest thing is to come out healthy. The Jets, knock on wood, have been very, very healthy so far throughout camp. There hasn't been any major injuries to starters or depth guys, and that's been really positive. And that's the thing here is hopefully whoever's out there tomorrow, everybody stay healthy, come away healthy, win, lose, tie, whatever the heck happens. Just come away healthy. That's what's most important here in these preseason games, especially when you've gotten this far already in the summer, remaining pretty healthy. Now, the starting quarterbacks for tomorrow's matchup will be Adrian Martinez and Tommy DeVito. Tommy Cutlets, as all the Giants fans know him very well. DeVito will start. Daniel Jones will not play, so neither starter will play tomorrow. And for the Jets, Martinez will get the first half. Peasley will get the second half. So also no Tyrod Taylor. If you remember last week, Peasley got the first half. Martinez got the second half. They will flip-flop this week. So the quarterback 3 battle will come to a close tomorrow as both guys try and put their final good tape out there to try and make potentially this roster, or at least be a practice squad guy if the Jets don't hold on to 3. be a practice squad guy, assuming probably Martinez or Peasley, whoever they like better, ends up potentially on the practice squad. So those are your quarterbacks. As for top players, position battles, all that stuff to watch for tomorrow, I continue to look at the rookies. We'll get into some of the other important position battles, but I continue to look at some of the rookies as guys that I'm looking out for tomorrow. We've talked about Isaiah Davis a lot. He's a guy to watch. I thought he looked good last week. I thought he looked solid in his first game against the Commanders. I think he's put together a strong camp. You want him to close out the preseason strong. Braylon Allen as well. I'd assume he plays tomorrow, unless if the Jets are really sitting a lot of guys and they even sit Braylon Allen. I don't see that happening. I think he'll get some burn, but Braylon Allen out there tomorrow, a guy who first week of the preseason against the Commanders, you saw his ability to get to the second level. You saw some of his speed, some of his, his ability to pick up some big gains. And I think when you look at last week, you saw his ability to be a short yardage back, physical runs, 3-4 yards, 2nd and 3, 3rd and 3 situations. We saw him convert a couple times last week against Carolina. So this week you would like to see another strong performance out of him. He's been awesome this camp, and him and Breece Hall should be a dominant 1-2 punch this season, as long as they stay healthy, of course. Olu Fashanu, that's a question. Not too sure if he's going to play. He missed Thursday's or Wednesday's joint practice with an elbow injury. Saleh feels it's nothing major. I will see, I guess. Who knows whether or not he play. I don't know if Saleh at this point has actually made a comment yet on whether or not he will play. But something to watch for if he does. You look at some of the defensive rookies. Quantez Stiggers, I feel, has put together a very, very strong camp. He's a guy that I think will play a nice depth role this year for the New York Jets and make the 53 as a late round day 3 pick. You look for him to continue his strong outing. And also something to watch for, too, with Quantez Stiggers is his special teams ability. He's been a guy that's been very, very productive on special teams so far. I thought last week especially he was a nice surprise on special teams as a gunner against the Carolina Panthers. So that could potentially kind of, make things interesting with some of the Jets roster decisions they will have to make in terms of Irv Charles and some other guys that could play a role in special teams. If Quantez Stiggers shows you enough, do they need to hang on to Irv Charles as another receiver, or could they just roll with Stiggers as one of their special teams gunners? That's something to keep an eye on, but he's put together a really good camp. I feel he's been a solid piece so far in the preseason as well. A couple tackles for loss, a couple pass breakups. He's been really, really strong. So continue to watch him, and he should get a lot of run tomorrow. Jarek Bernard-Converse, of course, has been shut down for the rest of camp. He'll be ready. He'll be back by week 1, so he won't be in tomorrow's game. So Stiggers will get a lot of burn. Brandon Eccles as well, 2 kind of depth guys. Chaz Surratt, Zaire Barnes, 2 guys to look out for. Both have put together nice camps. I'd assume Zaire Barnes wins that 4th linebacker spot, but if there is any more competition there, that's something to look for. Overall, Michael Clemens, he's a name to watch out for. I think he'll make this roster, but I wouldn't be against letting him go. I think that's a possible surprise cut. Although I do think the Jets coaching staff likes Michael Clemens. If you heard Robert Saleh speak yesterday, he spoke about Michael Clemens, how he took some of the blame on getting Michael Clemens to put on some weight, to try have him play inside and outside. Of course, that affected some of his speed off the edge, some of his pass rushing ability, which you saw last year. He took a drop off from not what was a good year 1, but a year 1 where at least he showed some promise. Last year was pretty much a non-factor when he was trying to play the inside and outside on the defensive line. So coaching staff took a little bit of blame there for trying to get him to put on weight. So it feels like Saleh and the coaching staff would be open to seeing what he can do this year, back down to his normal weight, back down to where he was his rookie season as just an edge rusher. But we'll see. He's a name to look out for if he does play. He's a guy that hasn't really done a whole lot in the preseason or in training camp. You guys know how I feel about Michael Clemens. I'm not the biggest fan. I think he's not really done anything in his first 2 seasons, and I think Tack McKinley and some of those other guys have proven a lot more to potentially make this roster over him, but name to look out for. I don't even know. I don't even think Will McDonald might not even play tomorrow. I think you saw enough out of him last week in the preseason. He's had a couple nice joint practices, has had a solid, I think, summer, I would say, for Will McDonald. If he does play, it'll be very minimal. It'll probably be one drive, maybe 6-7 snaps, if anything. But he potentially could sit tomorrow, depending on how many guys the Jets really are going to sit. So something to look out for. Of course, Will McDonald will be a name to watch if he does play. That's mainly it for players to watch. In terms of some of the roster competitions, roster battles, I continue to look at running back Izzy Abanaconda. Is tomorrow his last game with the New York Jets? We'll see. I think he's a guy that has put together a really, really good last week of training camp. Going back to the Carolina game, I thought he had a really good game last week against Carolina, and I think he's put together a pretty good week, I would say, of practice. But it feels like it's a little too little too late. Didn't have a very good start to camp. Was kind of exclusively, it felt like at times, working with third team. It felt like before Tariq Cohen retired, Tariq Cohen would make the roster before Izzy as a special teams threat. With Tariq Cohen retiring, it opened up a door for Izzy. Do the Jets hold on to 4 running backs or not? That's the big question. I still think there's a good chance that they do that. And if so, I would definitely say Izzy wins the battle over Xavier Valade, who really hasn't shown you much of anything this camp or preseason. But Izzy's a name to watch. And even if it isn't for the Jets, if the Jets do cut him, maybe he lands somewhere else. I think Izzy could be a guy that if he does get cut, might be tough to bring back. Only in year number 2. Has shown some positive, some flashes. But at the end of the day, it's just the roster's numbers. It's just the roster game. The Jets running back room is already loaded. And Izzy could be the odd man out. And if there will be an odd man out, it would be him. But we'll see. But for him to go out there and potentially put together another strong outing will certainly help his case to maybe make the team as a 4th running back or jump on to somewhere else if he does get cut on roster cut down day. Also wide receiver. This is the last big push. I think Jason Brownlee is going to make the roster. I think he should make the roster. I'd be a little disappointed if the Jets cut Jason Brownlee and, let's say, hold on to Irv Charles just because of his special teams value. I think Brownlee's significantly better at receiver than Irv Charles is. I don't really see a Lance McCutcheon or any of those guys making the roster. I don't think they've shown enough. Brownlee had a good week against Washington, had that really nice touchdown pass or touchdown reception from Andrew Peasley, but did struggle in Carolina. Had a couple drops, was targeted 5 times, only caught 1 of the 5 targets. So he will look to bounce back in a game environment, but had a really good week of practice. Caught a 55-yard touchdown from Tyrod in joint practice during a 2-minute drill to end practice against the Giants. And yesterday, he also had a one-handed touchdown catch on the final practice of training camp. So had 2 touchdowns back-to-back days in practice this week. Had a touchdown against the Commanders. After a slow start this summer, I think Jason Brownlee's put together a really, really nice summer. And I think he's the front runner. I think he should make the roster. But this is his final push. This is his final opportunity to prove that. Irv Charles, another guy, right? Will the Jets hold 6 receivers? Will they hold 7? If they hold 6, I think Brownlee's in. Irv Charles is the last man out. If they hold 7, that opens up the door for Irv Charles. How much do they value special teams with Irv Charles? That's something to keep an eye on. But the wide receiver 6, wide receiver in battle is really heating up, and this is the final chance for both those guys to make their mark. Other competitions, offensive line depth, right? I don't really know how much really surprises there will be, but outside of the starting 5, Olu's making, of course, Olu your 6th, Carter Warren your 7th. I'd assume Max Mitchell makes the team as another tackle. Can never hurt to have enough tackle depth. That would be your 8th. I think Wes Schweitzer makes it. That's your 9th. And then after that, you've got, Xavier Newman, who I think has put together a really strong camp. Is he in? You also have Cole Laval. You've got Chris Glazer. So you've got a couple other guys that could kind of fight for that final spot. I think Xavier Newman will definitely potentially win that. He's had a really good camp. He's had a really good couple preseason games. But offensive line depth, seeing how the rest of that shakes out is definitely something to watch for. And, of course, up front, defensive line. We've already talked about Michael Clemens. But you look at, assuming they've got their, let's say they hold on to maybe Tack McKinley, Braden McGregor is a name to look out for. Leonard Taylor, if they want to hold on to another interior guy. Bruce Hector, because you know your 4 interior guys already. Kinlaw, Quinnen, Solomon Thomas, Lecky Fotu. Do they like Bruce Hector enough to keep him around? Tanzel Smart's a name that we know a lot that is always kind of on the roster bubble every year. What do they see out of Leonard Taylor? I think Leonard Taylor's had good preseason games. He's had at times a streaky camp. He's kind of there's days where he dominates, and then there's days where he's just non-existent. There hasn't been much consistency, but when he's good, he's been really good and an interesting piece to keep an eye on. So interior wise, and then of course on the edge, Tack McKinley, I think, makes this roster. I do. And we'll have our full 53-man roster prediction. But Tack McKinley, I think, makes this roster. Braden McGregor, still on the outside. Eric Watts, Jalen Holmes, all guys still fighting. So they'll have their final chance here tomorrow night to prove their wealth, prove why they should make the team. And that's about it. That's about it. Not a whole lot else to watch for. I hope better play out of the quarterback position, out of the offense than we saw last week. Last week was ugly. It was preseason football at its finest. Week 1 was, I don't know, it was fun. It was, you saw Peasley do some good things. Martinez did a couple good things. He threw for over 100 yards on his 10 passes. You saw a lot of good out of Braylon Allen. Izzy obviously had a touchdown. So last week it was just 5 field goals. So hopefully we get a little bit more offense out of the Jets and Adrian Martinez and Andrew Peasley. It'll be the Martinez and Peasley show one final time this summer. And that's it. Your final preseason preview of the summer, of the preseason. And next up, our next preview will be Jets Niners for Monday Night Football. Really fired up. Game previews are my favorite video to make. Love training camp content. Training camp content is up there with some of my favorite videos to make. Love recapping practice after each day. But game previews, I just love taking a deep dive into both teams. If you've been to the channel the last 2 years, been to the podcast the last 2 years, of course, we do our X factors, our keys to the game, matchups to watch, all that great stuff. So can't wait for that. We are just 17 days away. But we've got one more hurdle in the preseason to jump, and that is the New York Giants tomorrow night at MetLife Stadium. I will potentially have a recap out tomorrow or Sunday, potentially Sunday night. I will be watching the game, but I've got some other things going on, so I will see if we get a recap out. If not, we'll have our 53-man roster preview on Monday. And we'll have another set of player previews on Monday as well before roster cutdown day next week. So stay tuned. A lot more content coming your way. As always, until next time, JETS, 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 Jets.